to another one. It's your boy Dabrand knows. It's currently 11:30 in the morning, and we getting it hot. You heard? You know, every time me and wifey go out, you know what I mean? She always asks me what I want. When I look at the menu, I just, man, you know, I'm just a normal type guy, man. You know what I mean? Everything just please me. But that chicken and cheese, that chicken and cheese, that bring me lemonade, that chicken and cheese, that's all you need. That chicken and cheese. Yes, indeedy. It's your boy Dabrand knows, and we back with another one, as you could tell. But check it out, man. You know, there's a lot been going on right about now. Come on, man. Get this fucking cat out of here, B. Anyway, back to business. We out here. It's nice and chilly. The Hawks is out, as y'all could tell. We got some news for you. Let's get into this. It's your boy Dabrand knows. And now that you know that your boy Dabrand knows, let's get into this.
Why are you sensationalizing the propaganda?
What are we sensationalizing?
To attack our community.
They don't want a fraud unit to do anything. They want a fraud unit on paper.
Halicki was fired in 2013 while in the midst of a big investigation.
This is a cover-up. This is a deliberate attempt by the officials in Hennepin County to deceive the taxpayers.
Sometimes they would come in, sign their children in, sign themselves in, and go grocery shopping.
Our sources say the more children a woman had to enroll in childcare, the more she'd make per hour.
How you doing, man?
I just want to ask you,
Yes, sir.
why are you sensationalizing the propaganda?
What are we sensationalizing?
To attack our community. What's your final objective?
We're not attacking your community by any means.
Are you making good money from this?
We're looking for fraud.
No, I'm
For
not.
instance, can you answer our question? Where's Safari Transportation Company 607?
1 second.
It's not there.
Were you admitted to any New York juvenile detention center where you...
Wow, we're gonna get right back to that. That's a good one. That's Nick Shirley doing his thing. But right now we're gonna go to the LV Nation. And she was popping. Check it out. This is good, man. I need to get involved.
And Walz said he would, but there's two problems. Walz's base is pissed because Walz's base is like, wait a second, we're going to be working with ICE, the Nazis, the Gestapo. You had a phone call with the dictator, and the deal is that ICE stays and gets the criminals out? They don't even want the criminals out.
Tim Walz voters are in pure panic. I have a huge update coming out of Minnesota right now as Tim Walz is finally doing what he should have been doing from the very beginning. But why is he doing it now? We spoke about the Minnesota lieutenant governor and the Signal chat gate that the mainstream media, for some reason...
Big shout out to Lou Valentino. Swap boy. Keep up the good work.
Is not talking about. Why aren't they talking about that Signal chat that basically exposes the license plates? It gives addresses, it doxes ICE agents, and it causes pure chaos. But something happened before I show you the protest just yesterday where, you know, these protesters and Tim Walz voters and Minnesota voters as a whole, Ilhan Omar supporters as well, tried to storm a hotel where they believe Greg Bovino and the DHS were staying, along with ICE members as well. Before I show you that, let's actually go to the update that I was really referring to in the title of this video, which is leftist protesters stormed outside of Tim Walz's office in Minnesota, furious that he is caving to President Trump and Tom Homan. Now, there have been reports of the huge update between Trump and Greg Bovino and the DHS as a whole. Trump is, they're saying he's cleaning house. He's sending Greg Bovino over to California. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But we know that Tom Homan is coming. He is coming to town, and he's not coming as a really friendly face. He's announcing that there are going to be people held accountable. But why are these specific protesters losing their mind? Well, it's because someone is surrendering and caving in. And so yesterday, the reason why these people are melting down is because just last night, these officers, this is not the DHS, this is not ICE, this is the police department. This is in Minneapolis of Jacob Frey and Tim Walz working together with President Trump and doing their job that they should have been doing from the very beginning to stop these rioters, because these aren't really protesters, these are rioters. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the F around and find out moment when those police officers were sent by Tim Walz and, of course, Jacob Frey, and they're literally going right into the protesters, arresting all of them one by one. Nobody's safe anymore. Not under this new attitude of Tim Walz. But why? Why all of a sudden now is Tim Walz or Jacob Frey finally telling or giving these orders out that you should work with ICE, that this sanctuary state should work with the deportation agents, just like every other sanctuary city or state that has no problem? Why is this happening now? Why is all of these rioters getting arrested? A lot of people are saying that is, of course, because of the fraud that they've been covering and uncovering, and of the signal chats that they uncovered. So that right there is a moment that a lot of people didn't think was ever going to happen. And that's because of the conversation that Tim Walz had with Trump. He called Trump himself to say, you know what, we need to stop this. Many people say it was because of the chaos, but many others believe that it was because of all the leaks and all of the things that have happened. Tim Walz believes that he might not be leaving office. He might not, he's going to leave office. Obviously, we know that, but he might not be leaving just clean. He might be leaving, you know, if he's on Trump's bad side. A lot of people saying that he might be going to prison, but we'll see. We'll see about that. All right. So here are the angry protesters after these arrests happen. After these arrests happen, right? The state and the police commissioners and the police is finally working on behalf of protecting the ICE agents, which they weren't pretty much doing before. And because most of the time they were just standing down or fleeing scenes, we saw that before. They're now storming Tim Walz's office.
Justice denied! Justice delayed! Justice denied! Justice delayed! Justice denied! Justice delayed! Justice.
But in reality, right, all these protesters or rioters, is whatever you can call these people at this point. We don't really even know that what they identify as, if you know what I mean. This is one of the biggest stories here. This is one of the main reasons a lot of people are saying Tim Walz is pulling the plug on fighting back against Trump or ICE. It's been over 24 hours since Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan was exposed as participating in the anti-ICE insurrection chats on Signal. And she basically has denied her involvement. In fact, she hasn't posted on X at all since she was exposed. But Tim Walz did call the president to cut a deal. Was he protecting Peggy Flanagan from prosecution on that part of the deal? So many people are insinuating that Peggy Flanagan, who is the Minnesota Lieutenant Governor, is in huge trouble. And so right now, again, they're saying, hey, this was called upon. Tim Walz begging for mercy that nothing happened to this woman. Again, this is Peggy Flanagan. This was one of the last videos she posted. This is what she was saying.
I just left the site where Alex Preddy was killed this morning by ICE agents to show my respects and my deepest condolences to his family and friends and everybody who loved him and knew him. And I am holding on to the hope that I experienced yesterday by walking with 50,000 people through frigid cold temperatures saying ice out of Minnesota, and was inspired by the rallies that were held all across this country demanding that ICE leave Minnesota and all of our communities. They are doing nothing but wreaking terror and chaos and havoc. And to all those folks who showed up yesterday across the country, to everyone who is reaching out to know how you can help Minnesotans, the answer is you can call your senator today and say, do not vote to give one more penny to ICE.
So again, this is basically her saying that ICE is stoking fear. And, you know, just today in different parts of the country, a lot of people were saying that these ICE agents are, you know, modern day Nazis. So the rhetoric is still alive and well. None of this is pretty much over, right? When we talk about the fraud or when we talk about how this really all started. But one of the main stories here is Signalgate. And I want to give attention to Cam Higbee, right? Because Cam Higbee is the journalist who pretty much infiltrated these chats to get the information that he had put out there that, again, millions of people now know about. So Attorney General is apparently linked to Signalgate. So Signalgate is a huge deal. This is what he said. He said that the mainstream media isn't paying attention to the Signalgate and what has happened. Because when you talk about law and order, when you talk about the federal government and federal operations, which is what ICE is. So he says, in their legal help signal channel, there was instructions to report federal agents to Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, right? Keith Ellison, apparently a lot of people are saying he is more involved than you can possibly imagine. The link led directly to a page designed by Ellison's office for reporting the feds, right? So again, like this whole thing is pretty much about the federal government, which is Trump, and you know, just local governments, which is the states. In just this particular instance, we're talking about Tim Walz, Jacob Fry. We're talking about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. We're talking about the AG. We're talking about all these big time players in this one particular state in these cities. So what basically, it just seems like a war. It seems like these signal chats were flat out infiltration of the fact that they were in the state conducting these operations. However you may feel about ICE, you cannot deny that the impeding of the federal government's operations is flat out something that must be talked about. Because many, including me, I would say if you're impeding federal operations, that's not only a crazy crime, but that's probably the highest crime in the land, because the federal government oversees every state. This is the federal government. Federal government has the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. They have, illegal immigration enforcement as well. So we're now talking about these signal chats being linked possibly to the Attorney General, to the Minnesota Lieutenant Governor. And this is not a joke. Like this is some real stuff that can pretty much hang over. Now, many people have said, aside from, this Keith Ellison situation and all the proof and all the links that are in these chats, the biggest conversation here is about Trump. How is he going to handle this? Because I told you guys a while back, I said it. I said one of the biggest stains on this administration will now be that 2 people were killed by ICE. Yes, stop me right there. Lou, how can you say that sentence? Well, guess what? It happened. Even if now the state hasn't even picked up charges, many people, including myself, see these as clean shoots, right? A clean shot. Like these are not going to be won by the opposition if they were to press charges. If the state were to press charges on the federal government for this and we go to court, I just don't think that they would win. But public opinion is pretty much everything that matters, especially to the Trump administration heading into the midterms, which is why you see so much chaos. So all of these things, Trump is now removing Greg Bovino from Minnesota. Now, many people are saying those reports are fake. Tim Pool said Trump has surrendered. He surrendered. He took Greg Bovino out of this operation. He is now bringing in Tom Homan. He's having these conversations with, people like Tim Walz. They're having friendlier conversations now, which is totally fine by me. But the real conversation is here. what is the solution to these problems when you know and you find out that people are impeding, right? Not only are they impeding, but you have people that just don't respect federal law because of who's in office. So this is where the conversation becomes so wild. If you know Peggy Flanagan could have been involved in these signal chats, which she completely denies, fair to her, it will have to be up to the DOJ to step in and find her guilty and link to these things, or, you know, to the FBI. But it seems like, aside from all of this and everything that we've pretty much found, the real conversation is what is going to happen, right? What is going to happen? Because we know the voters are going to turn on their own. We know that these voters aren't regular voters, or these people in the streets aren't regular individuals. These are people that either have Marxist ideologies, people that don't believe in borders, people that don't even believe in the rule of law. They don't even care who these ICE agents are. They just hate Trump. And one day it was Palestine. The other day it was, the college protests. Then the other day it was Renee Good. Now today is Alex Preddy. So these conversations, as far as from Tim Walz, these go way deeper than people realize. And when you see conversations or proof of the matter of fact that Greg Bovino will no longer be a part of, ICE or a part of the DHS in Minnesota, and that he's also withdrawing 2,000 agents, what does that really say? Does that say that Trump bent the knee, or does that say that Tim Walz bent the knee, or does that say that they work together to find peace in this situation? But in my opinion, I know Tim Walz, one of the main reasons he's panicking is because of this. You got people storming in his office now. But not only that, it's why he ended up pretty much telling Trump, hey, I had to call you because this is going far, but it's going far because of his rhetoric. It's going far because of the fraud. It's going far because now we're finding signal chats. It's going far because when CNN was live, CNN accidentally recorded "Kill ICE." So they're saying that, these people are out there protesting the death of these people, but they're also calling for the death of ICE agents. So that's what this video is pretty much about. It's about the conversation about the actions after all of this. And the conversation needs to be taken more seriously. Is the federal law actually the federal law? Is that the highest law in the land? Is the president the highest law in the land, or anybody who works under him in that administration? Or are these states just flat out running maniac and they can undermine the president? Is that what this is? So there's a lot of people disappointed by what the actions have not been yet, because we just don't know. Or there's a lot of people that are saying this is the right thing for Trump to do. Bring it down. Bring it down. Take out just bring it down. No more people can die, because this will cause future elections and it will cause mass panic and chaos. And that's not what Trump wants in a midterm year, especially when it looks like the Democrats are already going to win the midterms. Statistically, it just looks that way. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. After all of these things have been found, what we got was Tom Homan now coming in. Tom Homan has said that he wants arrest. He wants to hold people accountable. He is going to go hard as Greg Bovino. But Greg Bovino not being a part of that no more, what does that say about the Trump administration? I love you guys. I'll see you guys on the next.
Yes, sir.
Why are you sensationalizing the propaganda?
What are we sensationalizing?
To attack our community. What's your final objective?
We're not attacking your community by any
not
means.
getting powerful erections.
We're looking for fraud.
No,
for instance, can you answer our question? Where's Safari trans?
So you notice right there, he's not really answering the question of the fraud. It's a very emotional reaction. Why you're sensationalizing. Either there's fraud or there isn't. They don't want to attack the argument. They just want to attack the person, build this emotional barrier so they can sit there and pretend to be innocent when they're not addressing the problem, the argument. Is there fraud or is there not fraud?
Company 607.
1 second.
It's not there.
How much money are you? How much money are you? How much money are you making?
Dreamline Security.
How much money are you making
I make money
off
off of YouTube. That's how I make my money.
Exactly. So you're making money off of sensationalizing.
That my job.
And attacking the Somali community.
I'm not attacking you guys. We're asking.
I'll tell you the reason why this is happening. All right. Let me tell you the reason why you're attacking
fraud,
this.
Correct?
Yes.
This has nothing to do with race. This is fraud.
This is absolutely has to do with us being Muslim
No, it does not.
All right, and us being from Africa. This is a constitutional argument.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. This person that's talking to Nick T is full of emotion, and he's basically defending fraud because he's not really answering the question. Is there fraud or not? That's the issue. That's why he's there. That's why a lot of people are there now. At this point in this situation, it seems like there's a culture of fraud, a culture where they knew they can come to Minnesota and just steal a bunch of money, taxpayer money, and no one's gonna do anything about it. And now someone is actually doing something about it. And we'll show later on that there's been history of news reports. Good people in Minnesota have been talking about this for years. And finally, enough attention is brought to it. And this is the result. People are using this as a way to attack the person instead of attacking the argument.
If you don't want us here, change the freedom of religion. Say, listen, we don't want Muslims in this country anymore.
We're not saying
no,
that.
No, no, no. Because when I go onto your comments, when I go onto your comments, what I see is people that say we do not want Muslims here. Kick every single Muslim in Minnesota out of Minnesota.
That's a comment.
You are.
As a creator, there's going to be a lot of comments, especially the more popular you are. You're going to see some people say some wild stuff. But the cool thing you can do, you can block them. You don't have to see those comments. There are going to be some people who are going to say some wild stuff. You don't have to look at it. In any YouTube video, especially when there's a very emotional, controversial topic, there are people who are going to say outrageous things. Is it majority of the comments? No. But you can block them, you can mute them. You don't have to have them in your timeline. But to say that the comments or reflect the person that is creating the video is ridiculous. It's not true.
Listen, you're preparing for the Somali community to maybe be taken to concentration camps, just like the Japanese community. All right, you're sensationalizing.
No, we're not.
All right,
Sir,
something that can
listen.
that's something that can jeopardize the safety and the protection of the Somali community. If anything happens to the Somali community, listen, I'm not doing anything. I'm not physically touching you. You're getting very close. I'm not physically touching you. No, I'm not physically touching you.
This is fraud.
What you're doing, when I go into your comments, people who hate Muslims, who want us out of here for being Muslim, are using your material. Islamophobes use your material. People who hate Islam use your material.
He's not answering the question, so now he's getting really, really emotional. And that's unfortunate when you can't really have a civil conversation with someone that becomes so emotional. Really, you just ignore him at this point because there is no real conversation being had here.
Facts. Money just want to yell and scream.
Waltz is just a hypocrite and a fraud. Okay, it's like every time I look at this guy, he looks guilty. Is it just me, or do you guys see it as well? I mean, you could see the liberal stare right there in his eyes, and even Jake Tapper looks like, there's no saving this guy. Okay, it's just like Jake Tapper just has this like hopeless look, like, well, we're like the Titanic is sinking, and then Tim Waltz just always looks guilty. What is with that? I know I'm not the only one seeing that. Okay. And then you really see that Tampon Tim Waltz is ultimately just a criminal. Okay, I really am convinced that Tampon Tim Waltz is a criminal. He's a hypocrite. He's a fraud and just a liar and a thief all around. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Also, comment down below if you guys can hear me well. If the audio is good, let me know. Shout out to the King Squad. Thank you for any and all donations and all the positive comments. They really make my day. Road to 300K. Let's get right into this video. Let's go.
You're the governor of an agriculture-heavy state, one of the top 5 in the country, I believe. What's your reaction to what you just heard from the agriculture secretary?
Yeah, good morning, Jake. Well, I'm stunned. Your questions were spot on. It's very clear that she talked about the people she's listening to. That is not the agricultural community. It is
reacts for this wonderful commissary. Thanks, brother.
Certainly not producers. It's not folks like Cargill, CHS, General Mills who are out in my district. Look, this is a really precarious time, and the flippant nature that we're just trying something new here is really dangerous. These markets took us years to develop, and we have to be dependable trading partners. They don't come back overnight, and everyone knows in the history of trade wars, agriculture gets hit the hardest. So I'm deeply concerned. It's our #1 export. Adding the tariffs, our 2 biggest export markets are Mexico and Canada. They're our great friends. This is just really, really terrifying. I would encourage, and I'll call the secretary, I'd encourage her to come to Minnesota and see everything that she said is not what's happening on the ground. So look, it's a precarious time.
So let me ask you, because another group you're in touch with, the United Auto Workers Union, you have a lot of that. They have supported you for years and years and years. They were excited to have you on the Democratic ticket. President Trump argues that these tariffs are needed to bring American manufacturing back and to help American workers left behind in places like Minnesota. He has support from the UAW. The UAW called his auto tariffs, quote, a long overdue shift away from a harmful economic framework that has devastated the working class. It signals a return to policies that prioritize the workers who build this country rather than the greed of ruthless corporations, unquote. I have to say, that sounds a lot like language you would use. What do you say to the UAW?
Yes. It is what I would use. And here's the thing that the Democrats have to figure out. Donald Trump's language around this, he's not wrong that we've had manufacturing gutted. He's not wrong that we saw an outshoring. People of my generation were told, there aren't going to be any manufacturing jobs, so you need to go to college and rack up student loan debt. The problem is Donald Trump's solution to this is not the solution. Now, UAW is right. Certain tariffs, if they're on to steel or if they're targeted correctly, do make a difference. That's not what we're dealing with here. So just last week, 650 taconite miners are laid off. Those taconite miners are mining the taconite to make the steel to build the automobiles. So I don't disagree where they're at, and I think this is the Democratic dilemma. Donald Trump talks about the things that are real in the angst of people's lives. He doesn't do a damn thing about it. In fact, he does just the opposite, and he pals around with the people that caused the problem. And we don't offer them a solution, so it looks like we're not hearing them. So I disagree with Sean Fain and UAW on this issue. I don't disagree with them on that we made decisions over the last 30 to 40 years that I don't think helped America, but this is not the solution to it. Isolating ourselves is not the solution. We need to make sure that we're focusing. And again, I would just end with this, Jake. Donald Trump has not once ever cared about workers. This is why you need to support unions across the board, support the ability to have a living wage.
So you're in Ohio right now. You've been holding these town halls in red districts across the country.
I mean, I just have to interject right there and say it is absolutely amazing the amount of BS that comes out of Tim Walz's mouth. I mean,
for real.
Like at this point, just lock Tim Walz up already, okay? We know he's guilty. We know that he's just a liar and a thief. And it's just like,
right
wow.
Chin.
I get why they called Tim Walz No Balls Waltz, okay?
No balls walls.
And or No Balls Walls. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Drop down below in the comments your best Tim Walz names. Again, let me know if you guys can hear the audio really well, just making sure everything sounds good. And yeah, I it just gets worse. So stay tuned. Let's go.
You're saying Democrats need to do a better job of reaching Trump voters. I want to play something you said at an event in Texas last month.
How could you reach us with that guac guac?
We let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is. We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them.
Tampons in boys' bathrooms, Tim Walz.
My wife said, if you win, we'll fly to Asia. If I win, we'll fly to Paris. I bet you won't get toned with just Tai Chi walking before Christmas. Guess.
I guess Tim Walz is
the issues you identified there were immigration, DEI, and woke. You think Democrats' problem was that you just didn't do a good enough job explaining the policies and not that voters simply didn't just reject what you were selling, particularly on immigration, I wonder?
No, on immigration, what we were asking for is a bipartisan policy that strengthens immigration control, that recognizes that we need a workforce here, that they should be allowed here legally, and that when they get here, they're part of the American fabric. And that is the bipartisan bill we had. Donald Trump snatching up college grad students and sending them back or sending folks to El Salvador illegally, that's not the policy. But for us to say, we don't care that violent criminals come in, we most certainly do. What we were asking for is the resources to make sure they don't get here. And the same thing with the other policies. It's not a woke policy to provide food for children to get breakfast and lunch, and we get better outcomes from that. They defined things on their terms that weren't true. And what I'm saying is, are we going to turn away from being a country of legal immigration? Are we going to turn away from a country that thinks diversity and making sure that we don't have gaps in income between blacks and whites? Those are policies that have strengthened America. And I think what we allowed ourselves to do is we got timid. And then when we got power, we didn't pass things that improved people's lives. This whole idea, I think the Democratic Party...
If there's anything Tim Walz has gotten right, it's the fact that he said when the Democrats get power, they don't pass anything that improves the quality of people's lives. That I can agree with. Okay,
I can agree with that too. They do.
It's just, whenever the Democrats get in power, the quality of the American taxpayers' lives get worse, and it's like all the hard-earned money that just goes to taxes. It starts supporting random things and brand new ridiculous holidays and foreign wars and stuff like that, and just filling the pockets of politicians, and it just the quality of our lives just get worse. And it's just mind-blowing to me how the Democrats can sit here and act like they care about working-class Americans and black versus white and black and white and everything. I mean, just good Lord. Okay, it's too much ridiculousness for me. It's too much hypocrisy for me coming from him. All right, I'm struggling to watch it, honestly, okay? But let me know what you guys think. It's CNN, certainly not news, communist news network, so I'm struggling to watch this. But we're going to get through it together. Okay, let's go.
Gets theoretical, talk about food insecurity. People are hungry, get them food. People don't have a house. Make sure they have a living wage. That's the point that I'm saying is, Fox News will glorify, he's for DEI. Not your definition of DEI. My definition is rule of law that's fair, that everybody gets an opportunity. And that's the point I think we have to make. Now, look, I'll be the first to tell you, Jay.
I don't even think he believed that as he said it.
I'm out here doing what I can do. I don't know if I'm the best spokesperson to do it after just losing an election. But what I know is the public, and you saw it across the country this weekend, they're rising up and asking their leadership to do something.
So we heard your former running mate Kamala Harris say she's not here to say I told you so, although obviously that's what she was saying about all the Trump chaos. We're seeing, I have to say though, what does I told you so really mean here? I mean, people heard her message. They did not vote for her. She lost every battleground state. You yourself have criticized the Harris-Walz campaign for being too cautious. She may have told the American people, she may have warned the American people, but she didn't do it compellingly enough to win.
That is the absolute point. And look, when I criticize, I'm criticizing myself. I own this. I'm part of the ticket. And somebody has to come up with a strategy. I think this is exactly right. This is the thing. Look, Democrats, it was a good night in Wisconsin. I was over there. We saw that happen. Donald Trump's doing this. Just to be clear, nobody on the Democratic side is celebrating this. And those folks in the street are not celebrating that Donald Trump's making all these errors. I think what the vice president's saying is that was pretty self-evident that he was going to do that. I do think the challenge for Democrats, and this is, I think, a structural problem that's going to take a lot more thinking. Why, with all of that out there, did they not think we were any better than that? And they didn't. And I'm very concerned with the folks who stayed home. And these are folks that I'll say once again, Donald Trump has identified their angst. They can't buy a house. They can't afford to get a good education. They're concerned that their economic future is so precarious it could slip out from under them. Less than half of Americans have $1,000 in savings. And I think, why was it not so compelling? It should have been a slam dunk for us to say, we're the party that cares about that. We're the party that's going to protect Social Security and Medicare. We're the party that thinks the ACA is a good start, but we need to do more on health care.
Ooh, that is rough. I mean, goodness gracious. Okay, I guess you just cannot fix stupid. All right, this is hard to listen to. Drop down below in the comments if you guys think that Tim Walz is just a big fat liar. All right, at this point, just go to jail already. Like, why isn't Tim Walz in prison? Is it just me thinking that? I hope I'm not the only one. Okay, what are your thoughts about Tim Walz? Do you think Tim Walz is like he should be the president? Tim Walz has great ideas and he wants to see a greater America, or do you think Tim Walz is just a big fat liar? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments.
And we didn't do that. So I'm concerned. Democrats do well in special elections and off-year elections, but the electorate that comes in presidential election years is different. When I was young, It was easy to know what a Democrat was. They stood with the working class and labor. Republicans were country club and for the rich. Today, you ask people, they don't. We have a 29% approval rating.
Yeah.
It doesn't help us any that Donald Trump ends up with a 25% approval rating. We have to get back to the core issues, that this is about making America prosperous and stable and innovative for everybody.
Well, what do you make of the criticism that one of the reasons why your party was so resoundingly rejected last November is because Democrats were gaslighting the country, saying that inflation was not a big deal, heralding Bidenomics. Not only Biden, but Kamala Harris was heralding Bidenomics, pretending that there wasn't a problem at the border. And then fundamentally, this idea that President Biden was up for another 4 years of the job, while Americans in poll after poll for year after year were saying he's too old to do the job. Your party stood against all of those things.
Hi, my name is Tami, and I would like to give you a few reasons why you should consider dating a young Asian lady. You can choose a potential spouse from Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, or Indonesia. The geography is boundless. Have you noticed that Asian women have become more and more popular? I mean that they are everywhere, in famous magazine, on Instagram as top bloggers, on the runways, and on billboards. More importantly, they are in men's heart. True, they are this popular because most of them have everything that an object of fascination is supposed to have: natural beauty, stunning bodies, and charisma like temper. Yes, these ladies are beautiful, and even you can't deny that a lot of men are physically attracted to them. Anyway, Asian women truly respect and appreciate American men. These ladies are passionate, they have been raised to respect traditional and family values. American guys are usually less passionate and emotional than Asian men. It might seem that this could stop a local girl from looking for a foreign husband, but opposite attract. They like men from American countries because they are more ambitious, financially and socially responsible, and after all, they are just more rational. Lots of girls are dreaming of a good husband from America. So, what's the problem? Choose a dating site, a few weeks of conversation, personal meeting, and voila, a new happy couple is here. And of course, Asians speak English fluently. It's important, right? Yes. There are lots of translation tools to make a convo between foreign people clear. But it's always easier and more pleasant to have a nice conversation with a girl without a translator's help. Have you ever noticed how the members of Oriental families treat each other? This is what men get when they marry an Asian. Family and motherhood are sacred to most girls from Asian countries. Women bring harmony to men's lives and special tradition where their husband can feel at home and enjoy the safe harbor. Asian women do not pay much attention to the age difference. They do believe that a good personality stands first. More of it, they likely prefer men over 40 because they are more wise and stable. Sounds perfect, right? So why wait? There and take what is yours. Click the link below and take a 2-minute compatibility test with a young Asian lady.
EVE Online is a vast universe, alive with the unrelenting activity and combined history of its players. Pursuing lives of adventure, warfare, and prosperity, they share this existence in the biggest single shard, free-to-play MMO of all time. Set 21,000 years in the future, EVE takes place in a distant cluster of over 7,000 star systems known as New Eden. It is a rich and diverse universe, featuring densely populated havens of relative safety, governed by 4 great empires. Hostile systems, where player alliances make the rules. Even regions of anomalous and unexplored space that hold their own secrets. You play as a capsuleer, a revered breed of highly trained pilot, having achieved immortality through the use of cloning technology. You navigate the universe encased in an armored capsule deep within your ship, where you have complete neural control and function as one. There are hundreds of ships to fly in Eve. Everything from small, nimble craft and versatile mid-range vessels to formidable warships and colossal freighters. Each has advantages and suited roles, but all are completely customizable as you decide how to equip and arm them. What you do in New Eden is entirely up to you. Eve's immense sandbox gives you the opportunity to choose between multiple professions and activities. The key to this unique customization of your playstyle is skill training. This is a passive process, and it continues whether you are in or out of game. As a new player, you can focus on one specific area in order to quickly reach the same level of specialization as a veteran. So be adventurous and explore new avenues of development for your character, as you can always change role and reinvent yourself if desired. If you want to fight, combat in Eve can involve solo missions against non-player adversaries, or small group skirmishes, while for some, it can even be the thrill of fleeting up with thousands of fellow pilots and battling over disputed territory. If you want to explore, then the discovery of uncharted space and ancient regions that promise riches, danger, and adventure await you. You can also engage in the business of prosperity, be it industry, mining, or even interstellar piracy. The beauty of life in New Eden is that all of these activities, and many more, can be done alone.
Look, Joe Biden coming in and during COVID and being a governor through COVID did a hell of a job. But I think one of the things that we didn't do is we assumed that we said, and it was true, that we were going to have a soft landing and our economy was better than the rest of the world. Better for who? Better for the working class who was saying groceries were too expensive, as they are now and going up. They got to see us talk about things. Again, I go back to this. Don't talk about food insecurity or housing type of issues. Talk about people being hungry and wondering where they're going to live, or about their children's future, about real security. And so I think your question is spot on. I think we got intellectualized on this. I think the fact of the matter is Joe Biden did soft land the economy. He did usher us through COVID. None of us are saying we should be soft on the border, but we allow a vacuum.
President Biden did not do a good job, okay? Drop down below in the comments if you guys think that President Biden, I don't even like to say President Biden. I know he wasn't the one making the decisions. It's really President Autopen, okay, really, if you really want to take it there. But do you guys think Biden did a great job? Or do you think Biden was just an absolute crap show and Biden was Obama's third term? Let me know how you guys feel about that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Biden was Obama's third term? Okay, and do you think Tampon Tim Walz is going to look great in orange? Let me know down below in the comments. And it gets worse.
And Donald Trump fills it, the 800-pound gorilla, and their narrative starts to stick, and we look weak. We look weak like we don't care. We look like we look, Jake, I'm not going to say.
I guess a broken clock is right twice a day, they say, right? Something like that. And yeah, you know, Tampon Tim Walz, you know, he's right again. You know, the Democrats do look weak, and they are just a mess. So yeah, he caught that.
Hey, you know what we need to do is we need to just arrest people and ship them to El Salvador. No, we need to do invest the money on border. We need to make sure that we have the judges necessary to adjudicate things faster. We need to make sure if you're going to be in this country here legally, and when you are, you're going to be uplifted, celebrated, and part of this great American tapestry. We didn't do that, and then it fills them. They'll find the example that is horrific where you have someone who's not here legally and they commit a crime. That is horrific, but we don't do a good job of telling that.
Don't you think your party needs to acknowledge that President Biden was not up for the job of running for re-election and that this was a major mistake by the
He made that decision.
I know, but you all went along with the idea that he was up for it, and he wasn't. And everybody saw it, and the country rejected it.
Yeah, well, look, history will tell us to go back on that. That very well could be the case, Jake.
This is hard to watch.
What I'm concerned about is learning from those lessons. I would hope we would never do it again, make a mistake, make sure we go through and get someone. But I don't know where it helps us going forward. I certainly am deeply concerned that Donald Trump is going to lead us down a horrific look. Thank God it's tariffs that he said. Donald Trump listens to no one. Remember, Donald Trump has statements about, I don't think nuclear war would be that bad. I guess we're lucky that he went after tariffs instead of that route. Yeah. We have an issue in this country that's going to impact us. And if there is not a loyal opposition, if there's not some soul searching on our side, if there's not reaching out to those folks who are in the streets, they're leading right now.
So quick question.
I would tell.
Hard to do soul searching when you're deleting the souls. Okay.
All right, look, I don't know who needs to hear this, but my man just tried that new 100 milligram generic Viagra for only 87 cents a pop from Friday Plain.
Let me stop. That's a whole nother one, because their entire campaign with Kamala Harris was literally deleting souls, if you will.
Everybody, you better get with them. Yeah.
Quick question, because we got to go. But you said you're not going to run for the Senate seat there. Are you going to run for a third term for governor? Are you possibly going to run for president in 2028?
Well, I'm certainly thinking about running again in Minnesota if that's what they want. I am not thinking about running in 2028. And my advice to folks is if in this moment you're planning for 2028, you're going to get rolled by the people in the streets. You just need to be out there making sure you're helping and doing things like Cory Booker's doing things like Bernie Sanders, AOC, things that we see people out talking to folks. So for
being a radical, okay, like Zohran Mamdani.
Me, I'm going to get through this legislative session. If the folks in Minnesota want me, I'm kind of inclined to do that.
All right, that's enough of that. It's hard to really listen to this, okay? At this point, this is why I say that CNN is just lies, lies, and more lies. You know, and I can't wait to see Tim Walz in jail. I think Tim Walz would look great in orange. You know, this guy right here is a liar, criminal activist, quite frankly, all right? And we see that, you know, it's like he needs to be held accountable. All right, I really hope that Trump just gets rid of Tim Walz, you know, and gets rid of the gaslighting and the evil, okay? Because it's really a battle of good versus evil. That's really what it is. But you guys let me know what you think down below in the comments, okay? And we see that these individuals, they just want more money in their pockets, all right? I don't think it will ever get better, you know, with the Democrats. I think they're going to just keep going in a downward spiral. And, yeah. It's really hard to watch. It's very cringe, if you will, right? But that's all for this video, you guys. Shout out to the King Squad. Smash the like button, hit subscribe. Let me know if you guys prefer faceless content or me showing my face in the videos. Let me know what you guys like down below in the comments. What do you like and enjoy from me? Okay, I look forward to seeing what the King Squad has to say, as always. And thank you for any and all donations. Thank you for all the positive comments. They really make my day. I love and appreciate all of you guys. Again, let me know if my audio was good in this clip here. And smash the like button, hit subscribe, share these videos. Peace.
Yo, dog. Yo, Nas, that's what they saying, man. Yo, look, they would not be voting for that over and over again if they wanted.
Chamber, please. So don't come to order.
If they really wanted to work, they would not keep voting that shit in the office, man. Somebody who...
I'm looking for my glasses, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, my man. Yo, Nas, man, right now.
Mr. Chairman, with me today is Mr.
point.
Nick Ayers, a colleague from my office. Nick, would you go in the room in there and see if my glasses fell out of my jacket? Would you?
Trying to lock me the fuck up, right?
Nick, the president just helped me out here. Thank you, Mr. President. How's my hair? Is it okay? Okay, I understand. You can only do so much. I want to talk about a serious subject, Mr. President.
You know what I mean?
I want to talk about
None of my business.
welfare fraud,
He knows
taxpayer money.
You know what I mean?
Now, I want to make it clear that
So we don't even be needing.
I love Minnesota.
For real, we need to let them talk about it. Like right
I
now.
love Minnesota.
So I got to sit.
But I do not like people, whether they live in Minnesota or elsewhere, who steal money from the poor.
Can't deny it. We got proof.
There ought to be a special place in hell for them.
With AI, you can create any character you want in seconds.
This used to require huge Hollywood budgets,
complex software, and tons of time.
but right now all you need is a laptop
and knowledge of the best AI tools out there.
It'll cost you practically nothing, and it doesn't
By now, unless you are still living in your parents' basement playing video games, you know that there has been massive welfare fraud in Minnesota. It's staggering. It's stunning. It's astounding. It may rise to the level of $9 billion of taxpayer money meant for the poor. $9 billion. Now, it's an uncomfortable truth that at this juncture, most of that fraud appears to be centered in the community of Minneapolis among people of Somali ancestry. Some have said and suggested that it's racist to say that. Facts are not racist. What I just said is just a fact. So far, there have been 90 people charged, most of whom are of Somali descent. That's just a fact. There are over 100,000 people of Somali ancestry in Minnesota, most of them in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And the vast majority of them vote in a bloc, as is their right. And a vast majority of them vote in a bloc for Democratic candidates, as is their right. Some will say Kennedy's being a racist for pointing that out. Let me say it again. Facts are not racist. They're facts. It's already come out at some of the trials. And not all of the folks being charged are of Somali ancestry. I want to make that very clear. But most of them are. Again, just a fact. I apologize for my voice. Now let me explain what this thievery, this industrial scale fraud was all about. It was centered around Medicaid. And as you know, Mr. President, Medicaid is a federal program administered by the states. We put up most of the money to provide health care, health coverage for poor people, for pregnant women, for children, and for disabled people. Now, President Obama, through Obamacare, extended Medicaid to some folks in the middle class, but still the main purpose of Medicaid is to help poor folks and disabled folks. Because in America, we help our friends. You know, I was looking at a number the other day. In the last 50 years, the American economy has grown 142% in the last 50 years. The American economy has grown 142% in the last 50 years. Pretty extraordinary number. Welfare spending in America has grown 765%. So I get a little upset when some people say, well, you know, the American people are selfish. We spend over $1 trillion a year helping our neighbors who are less fortunate than us, mostly the poor. In our country, I've said this before, if you're hungry, we'll feed you. If you're homeless, we'll house you. If you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. Other countries let their fellow citizens die in a ditch. We don't do that in America. The American people have stepped up to the plate. So when people steal this money, this $1 trillion plus a year that we spend helping our neighbors, when people steal that money, it offends me. When they steal from the poor and they steal from the American taxpayer. It offends me equally. And the folks in Minnesota and elsewhere who stole this money, who took a giant Great Dane whiz down the leg of every taxpayer and poor person in America, every one of them ought to go to jail. There were four, it looks like so far there are four programs. Medicaid, and let me just say, the federal government puts most of the money for Medicaid, not all of it. In some cases, the federal government puts up as little as 50%. In some cases, 90% of the money being spent on Medicaid comes from federal taxpayers. We design the rules at the federal level. We put up most of the money, but the states are supposed to implement the program, and they're supposed to combat fraud. And many of them don't. The GAO says that about of that $1 trillion I talked about that the American people spend on welfare, as much as a quarter of a trillion, maybe more, 250 billion or more, is stolen. And it's got to stop. And I'm going to talk about a solution in a moment. But let me tell you what was happening in Minnesota. One of the things Medicaid does, along with the food stamp program, is to feed people, particularly children. So what these thieves in Minnesota were doing, they were setting up these fictitious corporations and applying to Governor Tim Walz's Medicaid office for money to distribute to the poor. And Governor Tim Walz's welfare office would give them hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, the thieves running these fictitious corporations sucked it up like a Hoover Deluxe. And then these fictitious corporations would go to restaurants in the community, many of them in the Somali community, and say, here's the deal. I want you to fill out a report saying you fed all these poor people. Of course, you're not feeding anybody. Just lie. And give me the report. And I'll give you a percentage of the money that I'm stealing from the American taxpayer and the people of Minnesota. And that's what they did. But they didn't just limit it to food. It was industrial scale fraud. Next, they moved to health care. They formed, some formed fictitious corporations, companies, saying we're going to deliver I said health care, I meant child care to poor people, homeless people. And so the fictitious company run by these thieves would go to Governor Walz's agencies and say, give us a bunch of money, we're going to house homeless people. And Governor Walz would give them the money, And the thieves sucked it up like a Hoover Deluxe. And then they went to a bunch of other of folks in the community and said, henceforth, you're in the housing business. And you need to fill out a report. It's a lie. Fill out a report saying you're providing housing for a bunch of people. Of course, they weren't. And then we, the thieves who got the money from Governor Walz, will kick you back a little bit of the money. Did they stop there? No. Then they moved into, I just described housing, they moved into child care. Under Medicaid, you can use money to provide child care. So the thieves formed a bunch of new fictitious companies and went to Governor Walz and his agencies and said, give us a bunch of welfare money, Medicaid money, give folks who are poor child care. And then the thieves running the fictitious company went to families, many of them in the Somali community, and said, do you have a child who's autistic? If so, we want to sign them up. But if some of the families said, no, we don't have a child who's autistic, the thieves said, don't worry about it. Lie. Tell us you have a child who's autistic. And whether your child is autistic or not, we're not going to provide any services for your children, but we will kick you back some of the money. It's disgusting. So it was in child care, housing, autism, food. $9 billion and climbing. Now, Governor Walz, in fact, I probably shouldn't repeat this, but I read something on the internet the other day. Somebody made an observation. They said, and I don't want to paint with too broad a brush because there's some fine child care services in Minnesota as there are elsewhere, but the person on social media asked a question: How do you know if you've discovered one of these fictitious child care services? Well, you go there and no one's inside, but the owner pulls up in a Lamborghini. And that's what happened. The people who were stealing the money directly from Governor Walz and then giving it to the folks that were helping them, the fictitious restaurants, or the restaurants creating fictitious lists of people they fed, and autistic children they were helping who weren't autistic. They took the money too, and all of them had a big old party. They bought cars, they bought jewelry, they took expensive vacations, they sent money back to Somalia. There is an investigation going on right now, I'm not saying it's true, that some of the money might have gone to terrorist organizations in Somalia. American taxpayer money that these people were taking out of the mouths of poor people. Now, Governor Walz says, I knew nothing about this, man. It's news to me. And he said, in fact, I'm taking some bold steps. He said, at first, I'm not going to run for a third term. I guess he needs more time. Hope he uses the time to prepare his defense, because he's got a lot to defend here. He knew what was going on. In fact, one of the lawyers representing one of the thieves in this case said many of the people, this was their excuse, said many of the people involved in the stealing thought that the state was okay with it. That's what he said. Here's his quote: no one was doing anything about the red flags. Red flags were everywhere. Nobody in state government, he said, was doing anything about the red flags. It was like someone was stealing money from the cookie jar and they kept refilling it. The state knew. And at one point, Governor Walz And some of his agencies said, whoa, you know, maybe we ought to put a stop to this. And they backed off. They said, no more money for a while. Well, fresh hell broke loose. You know what happened? The largest, most powerful, fictitious company, run mostly by people of Somali ancestry, sent an email to the Minnesota state government. And they said that the state agency that was failing to promptly approve new applications and give us new money from, quote, minority-owned businesses, close quote, it was going to result in a lawsuit featuring accusations of racism that would be sprawled across the news. If you don't give us our money, we're going to call you racist. They did it. It's all come out in evidence at trial.
If you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is declining in the polls. And President Trump responded, says Fox News polls can't be trusted. So now, Newsmax is conducting its own poll on President Trump's job performance. It takes just a minute to vote, so let us know if you think President Trump is doing a good job. We at Newsmax want to know your opinion. Again, the QR code's there, as well as the website. Make your voice heard and vote today. A brand new hour of National Report kicks off right now.
I'm 103. I am going to start Tai Chi because I still have 53 years left on the planet I want to enjoy. This is me after 2 months of Tai Chi. It keeps me strong, flexible, and energetic. It helps.
Make it a habit. 7 minutes of Tai Chi every morning, all the way for 1 month. In 1 week, you feel better. In 2 weeks, you look better. In 1 month, your wife won't believe your results. Here's a printable Tai Chi workout plan made for men over 50. These beginner-friendly exercises take just 7 minutes a day. Tai Chi helps men feel lighter, relieve back pain, and wake up with more energy every day. It's more than a workout. It's a game changer for your health and longevity. Get your printable and follow along.
In fact, a lady by the name of Kesa Megan, she's one of the good guys. She is a Somali American who used to work as a fraud investigator in the Attorney General's office, who, by the way, was just as involved as Governor Walz in turning a blind eye to all this. She says, and she said it in the newspaper, she said that elected officials, and particularly those who are part of the state's Democratic-led administration, were reluctant to take more assertive action in response to the allegations. Why? Here's her quote. There is a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash from the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc for Democrats. And she is among the few among many prominent figures in the Somali community who is speaking out against the fraud. In fact, at one point, a bunch of state employees, I don't remember how many, but they posted a letter publicly on social media saying Governor Walz knew about, and the Attorney General knew about this all the time. And we told them. We warned them early on. And you know what they did? They just stood there sucking on their teeth. They did nothing. And so you know what the state employees did? They went to the U.S. Attorney. They went to the U.S. Attorney. And the U.S. Attorney jumped all over this and said this is obvious fraud. And that's how all this got started. Now, what do we do about it? Well, first, I don't think that the only place this is happening is Minnesota. And certainly there are people involved in welfare fraud besides the few Somali Americans in Minnesota. And I mentioned the Somali Americans because it's just a fact. It's a fact in the trial of these disputes, the politics of it and everything else in the litigation. I think it's happening in various degrees all over America. Let me say it again. We're spending $1 trillion a year of American taxpayer money to help poor people, provide welfare, and GAO estimates that about at least $250 billion is being stolen every year. We took some baby steps in the One Big Beautiful Bill, as you know, Mr. President. We tightened up eligibility requirements. We're requiring states to check twice a year to make sure people don't lie when they sign up for Medicaid or for food stamps or for housing assistance. We've implemented a work requirement, but we need to do more. We need to do more, and that's why we need to do another reconciliation bill. Now, I hope I'm wrong when I say this. I hope I'm wrong. I invite my Democratic colleagues in the Senate. I love them all to come forward and help us, but I just know politics, and you do too, Mr. President. A lot of them are going to be reluctant. But we don't need their assistance. We can pass a welfare security bill with all Democratic votes. If I could do it on my own, I would introduce the bill tomorrow. I would go and look at every single state and every single country and look for the best practices on presenting welfare fraud. I would cross-record or cross-access a list of people who sign up for welfare to their tax records, if they have any. Sometimes people lie. In Louisiana, we've caught people making $250,000 a year getting Medicaid. But you got to check. Apparently nobody was checking in Minnesota, and I don't think they're on. If it were up to me, I'm drafting that bill now. I look at every state, every country, and adopt the best practices. And my bill can be ready in 2 weeks. But I can't do a thing about getting it passed, because I don't have the authority to bring it to the floor of the Senate. I don't. Only the majority leader can agree to bring a bill to be considered by the Senate. Those are the rules. If I were king for a day, I'd change it in a nanosecond. I think every senator ought to be able to bring his bills to the floor. And that's not a criticism of my good friend John Thune or my good friend Mitch McConnell or my friend Chuck Schumer. They're just following the rules. I'd change it. But we need to do another reconciliation bill. To fix the welfare system and stop the stealing. Stop the stealing. And we can do it with all Republican votes. So please, Senator Thune, pretty please, as I've said before, I'm shameless, I'll beg. I'll get down on my knees. John, please bring another reconciliation bill. We can do so much, but we can start with fixing welfare fraud. Please, John, please let us do the bill. I don't want to end on a negative note. I might hurt my back going down, Mr. President. I don't want to end on a negative note. I love this country. I just think America's the greatest country in all of human history. I do. And the whole world knows it. Everybody wants to come here. When's the last time you heard of somebody trying to sneak into China? No, they want to come to America. And I believe, as much as I'm standing here, that the future of this country can be better than the present or our past. It can be. I've always believed that we're only as good as our dreams, Mr. President. We're only as valuable as our children. but I'm not going to bubble wrap it. We got $30+ trillion worth of debt. And we got people stealing from poor people and laughing about it. And politicians participating in it. And the water's not, and Washington's got to do its role, its part to fix this. But the water's not going to clear up for America. The water's not going to clear up for America until we get the pigs out of the creek. Let's go get the pigs out of the creek. Please, Senator Thune, please let us do another reconciliation bill. Please lead with welfare reform. We can do it. You can do it. I know you can. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
It's time to listen up and take charge. Struggling to qualify for a home loan, business funding, or even a new apartment. These challenges are often caused by errors or outdated information on your credit report, blocking you from reaching your financial goals. At Dispute Beast, we've developed a smarter, faster way to take control of your credit. Our AI-driven platform connects directly to your credit report, identifying errors or negative items that could be dragging down your score. Best of all, you can do everything from the comfort of your phone.
Save time creating content and generate a high-quality clone of your voice with 11 Labs. Change the way you record podcasts, voiceovers, and branded content with the #1 AI-powered voice generating technology. Stop searching for the perfect voice and stop wasting time re-recording take after take. Try 11 Labs for free and start elevating your content today.
Mr. President.
The senator from Kentucky, from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with me today is my colleague from my office, Mr. John Lowry, and I appreciate his help. Last week, Mr. President, I spoke a few minutes about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We call it CPB. And the Public Broadcasting Service, most people know of that as PBS. And the National Public Radio, which most people know is NPR. And I'm not going to repeat everything I said last week, but I do want to revise and extend my remarks. The United States Congress created the Corporation for Public Broadcasting back in the 60s, 1967, I think. Those were very different times. There was no internet. There was no Facebook. There was no Twitter. There was no cable TV. There were no podcasts. There were basically a handful, maybe a few more, of radio stations throughout America. And television was still pretty new. There were 3 main television stations with local affiliates. And many Americans, particularly in rural areas, didn't have access to radio and television for their news, because that's all there was. I remember those days. And so Congress decided to start providing money for what it called at that time public broadcasting, to make sure that everybody had access to news through radio and television, even if they didn't live in their big city. And Congress intended that news be news, factually based. Now, those were the days in America of true journalism. I remember them. Perhaps you do too, Mr. President. Those were not the days that we experience today, opinion journalism, where young journalists are taught to report on who, what, when, where, how, and their opinion. Those were days when the news was really the news, and it was fair and balanced. So the United States Congress created the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPS. CPS here 50 years later, 50 plus years later, or CPB rather, still exists. And here's its relationship, CPB's relationship to NPR and PBS. We give CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, about $500 million a year. A lot of money. And Corporation for Public Broadcasting turns around and picks certain local television and radio stations and gives most of that money to them. And then those local television and radio stations, the chosen few that get money from the American taxpayer through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, buy programming and content from two other organizations. If they're a radio station, they buy it from NPR. And if they're a television station, they buy that content from PBS. So up here you've got Corporation for Public Broadcasting. American taxpayer through Congress gives them $500 million a year. That money flows down to certain select local television and radio stations. And those local television and radio stations then buy content from NPR, if they're a radio station, or PBS, if they're a TV station, which were loosely affiliated with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Since this scheme was established, the American taxpayer has given all of these entities about, $14.5 billion. $14.5 billion. That would be enough to build 2,700 miles of paved roads throughout America. And I base that on the roads I'm talking about are not gravel roads, they're regular paved roads, 10 feet each lane, actually 12 feet each lane with a 3-foot shoulder on each side. But instead of building 2,700 miles of roads in our rural areas and in our urban areas that need infrastructure, we've decided to give this money to CPB, which gives it to the local stations, which gives it to PBS and NPR. I mentioned the local stations. Only a select few local stations get this taxpayer money. Now, I probably wouldn't object to this if the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR and National Public Radio is what I'm referring to, of course, and PBS had been consistent with its original mission, which is to report factually the news to the American people. Government doesn't need to subsidize the media anymore because the world's changed. 97% of the people in America have the internet. But I still probably wouldn't object that much if the reporting by these entities was fair and was balanced, but it is not. No fair-minded person in America can look at this programming and believe that it's unbiased. It is decidedly prejudiced in favor of one point of view. That's not just my opinion. I think most Americans would agree with that. And because most Americans see the headlines that are produced by these three entities. I talked about some last week. This is what Americans' taxpayer money is going to do, to provide. Here's just some headlines from NPR. I mentioned these last week. I won't belabor them. Michael Avenatti, a profile of the media-savvy attorney. NPR, this is from NPR. They love Michael Avenatti, who, of course, is in jail today. He's a crook. But NPR loved him because he was anti-Republican and he was anti-President Trump. NPR published another article, How Racism Became a Marketing Tool for Country Music. Now, you don't have to be Euclid to see the implication here, that country music is racist, according to NPR. I don't think any fair-minded person would call that factual or fair and balanced. Here's another headline from NPR. Donald Trump's long embrace of Vladimir Putin. I also talked last week about a few other headlines from NPR. Here's one. Monuments and teams have changed names as America reckons with racism. Birds are next. That's what your tax dollars paid for. Eating less beef is a climate solution. Here's why that's hard for some American men. How the Taliban adds to Afghanistan's woes when it comes to climate-fueled disasters. No fair-minded person with an IQ above a single-cell organism would conclude that this is anything but biased to certain points of view. And there's more. I could do this all night, but I'm not. Here's some more headlines from NPR. There is no neutral. Nice white people can still be complicit in a racist society. That's what your tax dollars paid for. Another one. Ibram X. Kendi says no one is not racist. So what should we do? Another one. How artificial intelligence could perpetuate racism, sexism, and other biases in society. Another. Scientists debunk lab accident theory of pandemic emergence. Here's another one. As Trump pushes theory of virus origins, some see parallels to lead up to Iraq war. Your tax dollars at work. As U.S. confronts Russia, Trump's admiration of Putin is consistent. Another headline from NPR. The history of policing and race in the United States are deeply intertwined. Another. After Biden's debate performance, the presidential race is unchanged. This was the debate performance that President Biden gave, after which he got out of the race. If you believe that headline, You believe in the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and that Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes. But that's what NPR reported with your tax dollars. Here's more. Democracy on Trial, Part 1. A blueprint for the case against Trump. Is that fair and balanced? It's from PBS. Racism in the era of Trump, an oral history, another headline. January 13th, 2020. Another. This one's really special. A serial liar. How Sarah Palin ushered in the post-truth political era in which Trump has thrived. Now, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR and PBS have the right, whether I like it or not, or whether you like it or not, or whether Americans like it or not, to publish these articles and to broadcast this news. That's the First Amendment. But they don't have the right to do it with taxpayer money. At least half of America would look at these headlines and be offended. They would be offended first because they would, really for three reasons. Number one, they disagree with opinion journalism. Number two, they would disagree with the headline. And number three, they would disagree with the fact that these headlines are not fair. They're not objective. They're obviously slanted to one point of view. And they're using taxpayer money. If someone introduced a bill tomorrow, I'll just pick a publication to prohibit the New York Times, I would vote against that bill and argue against it. If someone introduced a bill to get rid of Fox News, I'd have the same position. If someone introduced a bill to get rid of the Washington Post, that would be my position as well. Whether I agree with those media outlets or not, we have a First Amendment, and we cherish it. And I'm rather fond of the Constitution. But if someone introduced a bill to give money to CNN, taxpayer money to CNN, or to the New York Times, or Fox News, I would oppose that as well. This is simply wrong. And we're spending $500 million a year, $14.5 billion over time, to give to people at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR and NPS to participate in opinion journalism, which they're entitled to do. But they can't do it on the taxpayer dime. They're doing it on the taxpayer dime, but they shouldn't be able to. I would also point out, Mr. President, that the folks at PBS and NPR and PBS are doing pretty well for themselves. NPR just bought a $201 million office space just up the road from the Capitol. $200 million. It came from the American taxpayer, so they could publish this stuff. NPR pays its hosts as much as $532,000 a year, taxpayer money. It pays its chief diversity officer about $320,000 a year. And you know what? Despite all of this money that the American taxpayer are giving to these left-of-center entities, their viewership has declined because people don't need them anymore. So why are we giving them money? I've introduced legislation to not to eliminate the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, not to eliminate the Public Broadcasting Service, and not to eliminate the National Public Radio. They can go exist on their own if they want to, but I do want to defund it. We're running a $36 trillion in debt. This is disgraceful in 2025. It's disgraceful whether it is left of center opinion journalism or right of center opinion journalism. It is disgraceful for the American people to have to fund this rot. Doesn't mean the rot doesn't have a right to exist, but they don't have a right to taxpayer money.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's great to be in this beautiful Oval Office. It never looked so nice. We're getting great compliments, and you see outside how that's come out. It's been great. We make a lot of improvements to the White House, and we're doing that. One of the things you should be looking at is the Palm Court, because that's been totally redone. So we like to preserve and make better the White House, and that's really what's happened, and we're getting tremendous reviews, and we appreciate it. But we're here for a different reason. It's called Operation Summer Heat, which is an appropriate term in light of what we're doing. And early yesterday morning, I returned from the Middle East, where we celebrated a historic agreement to end years of suffering and conflict. Amazing. Every country came together. I mean, even the enemies came out and totally endorsed it. Everybody. I've never seen anything like it. Nobody's seen anything like it. And just as we are forging peace and stability abroad, we're also restoring peace and safety and stability at home. And you see that in Washington, D.C., maybe better than any place, because we got there, and within 12 days it was very good. And within 30 days, it's been as safe as any city in the country. It's been great. Took out 1,700 people, got them out. These are career criminals in many cases, and people that shouldn't have been allowed in by the Biden administration. Historically, the summer months have been a time when violent crime soar, as you know, but not under President Trump. Today, we're announcing the results of a sweeping law enforcement effort known as Operation Summer Heat. We were in many cities that people didn't know about. We kept it a little quiet, and it had a big impact, and you'll hear that in a second. But over the past few months, FBI offices in all 50 states made crushing violent crime a top enforcement priority. That's what they did, rounding up and arresting thousands of the most violent and dangerous criminals. And these are among the most dangerous and violent people in the world. They were allowed, in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, they were allowed in by a very foolish, actually stupid, open border policy. Just anybody could have come in. They emptied out their jails, their prisons, their mental institutions. They emptied them into our country. And the people behind me have done an incredible job, because if we didn't have that administration, it would have been so much easier. They allowed millions of people in this country that shouldn't have been allowed, including over 11,000 murderers, half of whom murdered more than one person. And many of them are gone now, or they're put in prison, because we don't want to have them come back. So we literally put them in our prison, which we don't want to do. But we bring them back to their countries. Working with state and local partners, the FBI arrested over 8,000 violent criminals during the course of this period. In major cities like in New Orleans, Nashville, we saw a 250% increase in arrests. And we really went after the bad ones. These include 725 individuals wanted for violent crimes against children and murderers. These arrests are in addition to the work of our historic federal task forces that Make D.C. Safe Task Force has been unbelievable. I mean, the job they've done, it's incredible. And it's been so nice, because so many people, they're going out to dinner and they're having dinners. They didn't go out for 4 years. And now they're going out 3 times a week. Restaurants are opening. Restaurants are full. And usually that means a lot of good things. But restaurants that were closed are now opening up. And everybody's happy. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, actually. And everybody feels safe. You can You can have a child walk right through the middle of Washington, D.C., and nothing's going to happen. We were losing more than one person a week in Washington. They're being killed on an average of over one a week. The Make D.C. Safe Task Force has been incredible, and the Make Memphis Safe Task Force is having very similar results. It's much earlier, but we've been there for a week and a half, but I'm hearing the results are pretty incredible, and you'll hear about that. They're mobilizing more than 20 federal agencies for the largest law enforcement operation targeting violent criminals in American history. As a result of these efforts, violent crime declined nearly 20% nationwide compared to the same period last year, and it was the safest and most peaceful summer in 2 decades. And honestly, we haven't really even gotten going yet. If we didn't have to fight all of these radical left governors, we could have had Chicago taken care of, as an example. They had, in a short period of time, 4,000 murders in Chicago, and we have to listen to this man stand up and say that we're bad people. And the people of Chicago are walking around with MAGA hats. You have women, beautiful black women, walking around with MAGA hats. Please let the president in, and we don't care how he does it. They're not interested in National Guard or Army, Navy, bring them in, Marines, bring in the Marines. They just want the crime to stop, and more so because of the success that we had in D.C. I think if we didn't have that success, nobody would even believe it. So I want to congratulate all of the incredible law enforcement professionals joining us today, especially Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's terrific, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is a fantastic legal talent. He really is. He's a great guy, too. And, of course, FBI Director Kash Patel. They have worked so hard on this and other things. Since the start of the administration, the FBI has arrested over 23,000 violent criminals, more than double the number arrested in the final year of the Biden disaster. The FBI has also destroyed or severely disrupted more than 170 organized criminal enterprises and gangs, 1,600 of the most violent gangs, and confiscated over 6,000 illegal firearms. And they've tracked down and arrested 4 fugitives on the most wanted list, 4 of the most wanted. Actually, 2 of them were the most wanted fugitives in the world. There's still much more work to be done, which is why the FBI continues to work alongside the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of War to defend. And Pete Hegseth has been fantastic, by the way, on this too, on other things, but on this too. To defend law and order and combat violent crime, arrest illegal aliens, and make American cities the safest in the world. And when I campaigned, I talked about crime, but I never knew that we were going to get into it like we did. You know, I mean, I used to watch these cities with the murders. Chicago recently had one deal where they had 11 murders in one weekend, and they said, well, yeah, but it was a holiday weekend. They actually told me that was the reason, like it was okay because it was a holiday. It was Labor Day. These people are the worst. They really have to, they better, I tell you what, the people in Chicago and the people in places like that can be fixed. At some point, it gets to where you can't fix it anymore. It's too far gone. And we have some cities like that. But these are great cities that can be fixed. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco. I think we can make San Francisco. There's one of our great cities 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it's a mess. And we have great support in San Francisco, so I'd like to recommend that for inclusion, maybe in your next group. You'll get great support. Every American deserves to live in a community where they're not afraid of being mugged, murdered, robbed, raped, assaulted, or shot. And that's exactly what our administration is working to deliver. I didn't realize I was going to make this such a big factor in the administration. I didn't really campaign. I campaigned on crime, but I never thought we'd go into every city and take a really safe city that we've all been living with for years and make them safe. And now it's like a passion for me, and it's a passion for the people behind me. So I didn't get elected. I did get elected for crime, but I didn't get elected for what we're doing. This is many, many steps above. And I want to thank Stephen Miller, who's right back in the audience right there. I'd love to have him. I love watching him on television. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings, but maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far. But Stephen, thank you for doing an unbelievable job. And the people of this country love you, I tell you, and they love what you say about crime and stopping crime. So now I'd like to ask Director Patel to say a few words, and then Pam and Todd also. And I just want to congratulate them. This is an amazing thing, and we're just at the start. We're going to go into other cities that we're not talking about purposely. We're getting ready to go in. And when they go in, like Cash as an example told me that people didn't even know. 5 months ago, they went into Chicago, and they started doing a lot of work in Chicago, and we brought the numbers down a little bit. And but that really was just preparatory work for what we're going to do with the surge. We're going to have a surge of strong, good people, patriots, and they're going to go in, they straighten it all out. So a lot of these cities we're already working on, but we don't do it with a big flavor. But in a little while, you're going to see some numbers that you're not going to believe. And I think you'll probably start with Memphis, because I'm hearing the numbers are much quicker than we even thought possible. But again, D.C. it speaks for itself. Chicago is going to be okay. We're going to save Chicago. And I told you, and I told them, a very respected man, the head of the Union Pacific, said, "Sir, save Chicago. It can be saved." And the way he said it, it was like, can you believe it? We're trying to save Chicago. But I understood exactly what he wants, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to save all of our cities, and we're going to make them essentially crime-free, like other countries have crime-free. If you go all over the world, you go to the world, you hear Afghanistan and you hear all these different places. Our crime in certain cities is worse than anything they can even imagine. And we're not going to have that any longer. It's going to stop, and it stops right here. Cash, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I'd like to do is just highlight some of the outstanding work that the men and women of the FBI have been doing. And thanks to your brave leadership and the mandate you were given by the American people to not only defend the homeland but crush violent crime, you tasked us with our great partners at the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General to start making arrests and bring prosecutions and safeguard our cities. And you said it, this is just the beginning. In just 7 months, I hope the media takes a look at every one of these charts, because these are the best numbers for fighting crime in U.S. history, and it's only 7 months in. And to do that, our vehicle to do it of choice was Operation Summer Heat, which the FBI architected to go after violent criminals. And in just a 3-month span, you had 8,700 arrests of violent criminals. You had 2,200 firearms seized off the streets permanently to safeguard our communities. You had 421 kilograms of fentanyl seized. Just to put that in perspective, that's enough to kill 55 million Americans alone. You had 45,000 kilograms of cocaine seized, and thanks to our Department of Justice partners, you had 2,100 indictments in 3 months, from June to September alone. Mr. President, that in and of itself would be historic for a 4-year presidency. You did that in 7 months because you let good cops be cops, and you partnered us with the right people at the Department of Justice to put the handcuffs on and bring them to court and put them in prison. And if that weren't enough, when you look at the year, for the entire 7-month period that we're talking about here, if you look at the past 4 years of the Biden administration, 16,000, 17,000, 15,000, 15,000. That's the number of arrests year over year of violent felons in this country for the Biden administration. Mr. President, in 7 months, you have 28,600 arrests of violent felons in just 7 months alone, because of your leadership and the dedication of the men and women at the FBI who want to go out there and do the job they were prevented from doing, because that department used to be weaponized and politicized. And this is what happens when you take out the fangs of weaponization. This number is historic by every metric. 28,000 people have been arrested, violent felons alone. And then when you go over there and look at some of these charts, if you don't mind, I'll just hop over here. Look at the metrics for not just violent crime, but the homeland. Mr. President, during your administration, the FBI has found and located 5,400 children. That is a 30% increase year to date over the last administration. Violent crimes against children arrests alone are up 10%. Gang arrests are up 210% in the last 7 months alone. And transnational organized crime, which Stephen Miller has been a great partner in, is up over 12% alone. These numbers are historic just as a snapshot. But just so people don't think we're focusing on violent crime alone, the national security mission, Mr. President, under your leadership has never been stronger. We have gone after espionage activities against our main counterparts in China, Russia, and Iran. In China alone, we've had over a 50% increase in espionage arrests alone and prosecution. In Iran, we have had a 50% increase, again, in espionage cases. And in Russia, we've had a 33% increase in espionage cases alone. When it comes to counterterrorism, year to date, we have 125 arrests this year versus 100 last year, year to date alone. And when it comes to the cyber criminal activities, which are some of the largest enterprises plaguing everyday Americans, we at the FBI have put out a mission to go after cyber criminals like never before. Last year, they had in total 191. This year, you already have 252 arrests. 52 arrests of violent cyber criminals who are stealing from senior citizens, who are violating our children's rights and freedoms, and who are violating everyday Americans. These programs are record. And two of the things I'll finish with that I'm most proud of, Mr. President, this FBI. Fentanyl. As you know, it's a scourge that is killing our youth, 100,000 plus a year. To date, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl. That's enough lethal doses to kill 127 million Americans alone. To date. And if that weren't enough, Mr. President, you said we have to go after the worst of the worst. And you empowered our Department of Justice, our Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and the Deputy Director at the FBI, led the charge, not just on summer heat, but he also led the charge to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. These people have been on the run for years. And in 7 months, you captured not one, not two, not three, but 4 of the FBI's most top 10 fugitives. 4. And just to put that in perspective, Mr. President, the Biden administration captured 4 in all of 4 years. You're on 7, and we're going to get to 10. We're going to get to 10 of 10. This includes a lady who murdered her 6-year-old handicapped child and fled to India. We got her in 2 months. This includes a narco trafficker. This includes a sex trafficker. This includes another first-degree murderer and gangbang. These people were on the run because of the prior administration's reckless policies that destroyed our communities. And you came in and with a mandate said, go after the worst of the worst. This is just the beginning. This is what happens when you let good cops be good cops at the FBI. Mr. President, I just want to thank you for your incredible leadership, our brave partnership with prosecutors who know how to bring cases and make sure these arrests stick. And that's what the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General have led the charge across this country, because arrests without prosecutions are meaningless. We are deterring criminals from doing this activity. We are preventing criminals from coming into America, and we are absolutely crushing violent crime like never before and defending this homeland, sir. And not to mention, I almost forgot this one, it took you, sir, 2 weeks to get the Abbey Gate bomber. Joe Biden had 4 years to look for him. You got him in 2 weeks, thanks to the interagency effort by the FBI and the CIA, went to Pakistan, and now 13 brave warriors who were sentenced to murder because of disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. They have justice, their families have a peace of mind, and we're going to continue to find the others, Mr. President. On behalf of the FBI, sir, I just want to thank you.
Thank you very much, Gage. Great job. Very good. Very impressive. Pam, would you like to say something, please?
President Trump, the men and women of law enforcement say 2 things to me repeatedly. First, you have taken the handcuffs off them and let them do their jobs, and you let cops be cops. That's why all this is happening. The director, the deputy director are working around the clock. All of these great men and women in the FBI, they have families at home, and they are working during a government shutdown right now. Many of them have small children. Many of them, I was talking to an agent this morning, many of them have babies at home, and they are working around the clock to not only keep our country, but our world safe. And that's what Operation Summer Heat did. Thank you, Director, and to the Deputy Director for everything you did on behalf of the Department of Justice, and you're going to continue to keep doing. And they set the stage for what we're doing in Memphis. You're going to hear a lot more about that, our joint task force next week, but they set the stage for Memphis. And last night alone in Memphis, there were almost 70 arrests. There were 12 guns seized. And there was a 70-year-old man arrested as a result of our operation in Memphis who raped a child under the age of 3. That one case makes everything we're doing worthwhile. So thank you all for being here on behalf of both of us. Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you. Todd, you want to say something?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a great day, and I think there's stats that the director talked about which are important, but I want to give 2 examples of what summer heat has done that actually will apply hopefully to everybody in this room. The first is for over 4 years, during the last administration, there was a hotel in a town, the middle of a town in Alaska, that was being run as a drug den. There were over 1,000 calls to 911 over four and a half year period. There were multiple violent crimes, drug dealers, overdoses, and murders at this one hotel, ruining a community. Summer Heat went in there. It's not only arrested all the participants that were controlling the hotel, but seized the hotel. And so that's one example of what Summer Heat means to everyday Americans that just want to live in peace. The second example is a large narcotics trafficking group that was selling fentanyl in the state of Washington. They were shipping fentanyl and using commercial aircraft, putting fentanyl pills and powder in suitcases, flying them from the southwest border, mostly Arizona, all the way to Washington. It had been going on for an extremely long time, and the entire organization was arrested. And I say those two examples because it's easy to look at the board and see 1,000 arrests. How much different is our communities now compared to the past 4 years? But there's actual life examples. Every one of these arrests means that our streets are safer, and that's because of the work of this administration, of President Trump and Director Patel. So I will tell you, Attorney General Bondi and I are together every day with Director Patel, figuring out ways that we can continue to do this work, and it's not going to stop. Like the Attorney General said, and like the President said, this is just the beginning, or phase one, or a start, whatever you want to say, but it will continue on. So thank you, Mr. President, and thank you very much, Director Patel.
And Mr. President, just one last thank you from the men and women at the FBI. You found a way to get these individuals paid during a government shutdown, our 1811 agents. So on behalf of the FBI, it's a great debt that we owe you, sir. They're now allowed to pay for their families, so thank you.
And the military. Good.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, please? Brian, go ahead.
Mr. President, first of all, I know the feedback I'm getting from the American people, they want to say thank you. Law and order is not an option in this country. It's a mandate. So I know the American people thank you for that. In terms of the guns that have been taken off the street, do you have a number of how many guns were taken away from someone that had a prior felony or a previous crime that perhaps we can prosecute that? Because I know that wasn't the case under Joe Biden.
We don't take guns off the streets of people that are allowed to have guns. So every gun that we're taking off the street is because it belongs to somebody who is not allowed to have it. Could be a felon, could be somebody who hears illegally. There's all sorts of conditions. But if there's a gun taken off the streets by the FBI, it's because the person who has it is not allowed to. It's not somebody who's lawfully allowed to have it. So every single one of those guns were taken off of people that aren't allowed to have them.
And not including the FBI, all of the other agencies. ATF alone since January 20th has removed over 25,000 illegal guns off our streets just since President Trump's been in office.
And Mr. President, if I could follow up on that, could there be any further conversation to have national concealed carry applied to actual DC? Like if you had a driver's license in Texas and you had a permit, of course you could drive.
Well, as you know, they've been talking about that for a long time. It's an interesting question. A lot of people feel strongly both ways, but we are talking about that, Brian. Thank you.
Mr. President, on Venezuelan boats, I want to ask you, why not have the Coast Guard stop them, which it is empowered by law to do? You know, this way you can confirm who's on the boat and ensure that they're doing what you suspect.
Because we've been doing that for 30 years, and it has been totally ineffective. They have faster boats. Some of these boats are seriously, I mean, they're world-class speedboats, but they're not faster than missiles. But we've been trying to do that for years, and so much of the drugs, 25-30%, would come in through the seas. Right now we have, I would say, none coming in through the seas. In fact, I don't know about the fishing industry. If you want to go fishing, a lot of people aren't deciding to even go fishing. We've almost totally stopped it by sea. Now we'll stop it by land.
What's the next
But
step?
it never worked. It never worked when you did it in a very politically correct manner.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found. And that I view that as a good thing, not a bad thing. But we had tremendous amounts coming in by boats, by very expensive boats. You know, they have a lot of money, very fast, very expensive boats that were pretty big. And the way you look at it is every boat that we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives. So every time you see a boat and you feel badly. You say, wow, that's rough. It is rough, but if you lose 3 people and save 25,000 people, these are people that are killing our population. Every boat is saving 25,000 lives, and you can see it. The boats get hit, and you see that fentanyl all over the ocean. It's like floating in bags. It's all over the place, and it's a tremendous. We're saving tremendous amounts of lives. Yeah,
Mr. President, on that issue, I know you've talked about. I have a question for you, and then I also have a question for Director Patel. I know you talked about having some distaste for Boston recently. Is this one of the cities that you might be looking into, and can you give us a hint about other cities that you might be?
You're saying for where? For where?
For Boston.
Yeah. Well, Boston has a bad mayor who at least is a reasonable IQ person. You know, most of them are low IQ. But, and they're so bad. I mean, what's going on in Chicago is just, you'd think the guy would say, hey, look, we have a problem, Mr. President. Could you come in and straighten it out? We could have that done in a month if we had their cooperation. It's going to be done anyway, but we could have it done in a month. Yeah, Boston, she's got 4 areas that are, wrong. And, somebody said, would we think about taking the World Cup away from Boston if they don't straighten it out? And the answer is yes, we have the right to do that with FIFA. So if we think that LA is going to be bad, or we think that applies a little bit to the Olympics too, but we'll talk about FIFA first. FIFA is very hot. If we think there's any reason that, whether it's Boston or anywhere else, that they're not doing their job, we're going to take those World Cup games and move them someplace else.
Thank you. And then Director Patel, there's been so many conspiracy theories swirling around about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Do you have any updates for us, especially in light of all the online content